Imagine an island where turquoise water meets untouched jungle, where secluded beaches stretch beneath dramatic granite mountains, where sea turtles return to the shore under the cover of darkness, and where some of Vietnam's most important historical stories are hidden behind peaceful tropical scenery. This is Côn Đảo, an isolated archipelago in southern Vietnam and one of the country's most fascinating destinations. But Côn Đảo isn't simply another tropical beach getaway. It is a place where nature, history, spirituality, conservation, and luxury tourism all exist side by side. And in 2026, Côn Đảo is entering a new chapter. So what is this island really like? How do you get there? What can you do? Where can you stay? And is Côn Đảo worth visiting? Let's explore one of Vietnam's most mysterious island destinations. Côn Đảo is an archipelago located in the waters off southern Vietnam, roughly 230 kilometers from Ho Chi Minh City. The archipelago contains 16 islands, with Côn Sơn being the largest and the main inhabited island. The island itself covers roughly 76 square kilometers, making it small enough to explore without spending hours traveling from one side to another. But despite its relatively small size, Côn Đảo packs an incredible amount into its landscape. There are tropical forests, mountains, coral reefs, quiet beaches, historic buildings, religious sites, and one of Vietnam's most important marine conservation areas. And there's an important development travelers should know about. Since July 1st, 2025, Côn Đảo has officially become a special administrative zone of Ho Chi Minh City. That makes Côn Đảo part of a new administrative structure, while retaining its distinctive island identity. Vietnam has no shortage of beautiful islands. Quốc has massive resorts, nightlife, and international tourism. Nha Trang is famous for beaches and entertainment. But Côn Đảo is different. It feels quieter, more remote, and considerably more connected to nature. A large portion of the archipelago is protected by Côn Đảo National Park. The protected area includes approximately 6,000 hectares of terrestrial forest and 14,000 hectares of marine area. The park protects tropical forests, coral reefs, marine ecosystems, and important wildlife habitats. In September 2025, Côn Đảo National Park was also added to the IUCN Green List, strengthening its international conservation credentials. And the park isn't simply somewhere you drive through. It's part of the experience. Visitors can hike through tropical forest, explore coastal areas, snorkel, dive, and take boat trips to nearby islands. If you're coming to Côn Đảo for beaches, you're not going to be disappointed. One of the island's best-known beaches is Dam Trao Beach. Surrounded by tropical vegetation and dramatic coastal scenery, Dam Trao is particularly attractive for travelers looking for a more relaxed beach experience. Then there's Jat Doc Beach, another beautiful stretch of coastline surrounded by greenery. And for travelers who want something even more secluded, there are numerous smaller beaches and coastal areas scattered around the island. One of Côn Đảo biggest advantages is that mass tourism has not transformed the coastline to the same extent as some of Vietnam's better-known resort destinations. You won't find endless rows of beach clubs here. Instead, the experience is much more about nature, quietness, and exploration. But some of Côn Đảo greatest attractions aren't actually on the island, they're underneath the water. The surrounding marine environment is home to coral reefs, tropical fish, sea turtles, and other marine life. Popular boat excursions can take travelers toward islands and islets including Bay Can, Thai Islet, and Cow Islet. Snorkeling and scuba diving are among the most popular activities. And for nature lovers, one experience stands above almost everything else: sea turtles. Côn Đảo is one of Vietnam's most important locations for marine turtle conservation. During the nesting season, visitors may have opportunities to participate in carefully managed conservation experiences. Depending on conditions and regulations, travelers can witness turtles nesting or see hatchlings make their way toward the sea. But this isn't an entertainment show. These are protected animals. Visitors should follow guides, maintain distance, and avoid lights, noise, and touching wildlife. The goal is to observe the turtles without interfering with the natural process. That makes the experience far more meaningful. And now we come to the part of Côn Đảo that separates it from almost every other Vietnamese island: its history. For more than a century, Côn Đảo was associated with imprisonment and political incarceration. During the French colonial period and later conflicts involving Vietnam, the islands became infamous for their prison system. Today, visitors can explore historic prison sites and museums that document this painful chapter. One of the most important stops is the Côn Đảo Museum. Here, visitors can learn about the island's history through photographs, artifacts, and historical exhibits. Then there are the former prison facilities. Among the most famous are the notorious tiger cages, associated with brutal conditions and solitary confinement. Walking through these sites can be a very different experience from walking along the island's beaches. The scenery outside may look like paradise, but these buildings tell another story. A story of imprisonment, resistance, and suffering. One of the most significant places on Côn Đảo is Hang Duong Cemetery. The cemetery contains the graves of thousands of people who died during the island's prison era. It is also associated with Vo Thi Sao, one of Vietnam's best-known resistance figures. Vo Thi Sao was executed by the French when she was only 19 years old. Today, her grave has become an important pilgrimage destination. Many Vietnamese visitors come to pay their respects, particularly in the evening. The atmosphere is very different from conventional tourism. People arrive with flowers and incense, they pray, they remember, and they leave quietly. This spiritual dimension is one of the reasons Côn Đảo is much more than a beach destination. Côn Đảo also has a strong spiritual identity. One of the best-known religious landmarks is Van Son Pagoda, located on a hillside overlooking the surrounding landscape. Visitors who climb toward the pagoda are rewarded with panoramic views of the island and ocean. Another important site is in Sun Temple, associated with the legend of Lady Phi Yen. Together, these sites reveal another side of Côn Đảo. For some visitors, the island isn't simply somewhere to relax. It's a place of reflection, a place of remembrance, and for many Vietnamese travelers, a place of pilgrimage. Despite its remote atmosphere, Côn Đảo does have upscale accommodation. The island's most internationally recognized luxury property is Six Senses Côn Đảo. Located in a private beachfront setting, the resort combines villas, wellness experiences, dining, and access to the island's natural surroundings. But luxury doesn't mean Côn Đảo is exclusively for wealthy travelers. The island also has smaller hotels, guest houses, and locally operated accommodations. So there is a range of choices depending on your budget. However, Côn Đảo generally isn't the place to visit if your primary goal is huge shopping malls, endless nightlife, or a massive selection of entertainment complexes. Its attraction is almost the opposite. Peace, nature, privacy, history, and slow travel. Food is another part of the Côn Đảo experience. Because you're surrounded by the sea, seafood naturally plays an important role. Visitors can find dishes featuring fish, squid, crab, shrimp, and other locally available seafood. You'll also find familiar Vietnamese favorites such as noodle dishes, rice dishes, soups, grilled seafood, and street food. And don't overlook the local markets. Markets are often one of the best ways to experience the everyday side of an island destination. Instead of focusing exclusively on resort restaurants, explore local eateries and see what residents are actually eating. Côn Đảo is also known for local specialties and island-made products that can make interesting souvenirs. Getting to Côn Đảo requires more planning than getting to Phu Quoc. That remoteness is part of what has helped preserve its character. The fastest option is flying. Flights connect Côn Đảo with Ho Chi Minh City, and current travel information also identifies connections through Can Tho. Flight time from Ho Chi Minh City is roughly 45 minutes. There are also high-speed ferry options. Depending on the route, ferries can operate from places such as Vung Tau or Tran Jae in Soc Trong. Travel times can range from approximately 2.5 to 4 hours, depending on the departure point and service. But here's something important: weather and sea conditions matter. Ferry schedules can be affected by rough seas, so if you're planning a trip, check the current operator schedule, rather than relying on an old travel video or outdated timetable. So when is the best time to visit? Current local tourism information generally identifies March through October as a particularly favorable period, especially for marine activities. This is when travelers may find better conditions for snorkeling, diving, and exploring the surrounding islands. Sea turtle conservation experiences are another major attraction during the nesting and hatching season. But Côn Đảo has a tropical climate, and weather conditions can vary. Some months can bring stronger winds and rougher seas, so the ideal travel period depends on what you want to do. If your priority is diving and snorkeling, prioritize calmer sea conditions. If your priority is history, food, and relaxation, weather becomes less important. And if you're traveling specifically for turtles, plan around the conservation season and confirm the current visitor arrangements before booking. So what exactly can you do once you're there? You can explore secluded beaches, go snorkeling, take a diving excursion, visit Côn Đảo National Park, hike through tropical forest, take a boat to surrounding islands, look for marine wildlife, experience turtle conservation programs, visit the Côn Đảo Museum, explore the historic prison complexes, visit Hang Duong Cemetery, see Van Son Pagoda, explore local markets, ride a motorbike along the coastal roads, watch the sunset, and simply slow down. That last activity might actually be the most important. Because Côn Đảo isn't designed around rushing from attraction to attraction. It's a destination where the experience comes from combining everything together. Compared with many mainland destinations in Vietnam, Côn Đảo can feel more expensive. The reason is simple. You're on a remote island. Transportation costs more. Some goods have to be transported from the mainland. And premium accommodations can be significantly more expensive than local guest houses. But travelers can control their budget by choosing locally operated hotels, eating at neighborhood restaurants, and using local transportation. In other words, Côn Đảo isn't necessarily a budget destination like some parts of Vietnam. But it also doesn't have to be a luxury-only vacation. Your biggest expense will usually depend on your accommodation and transportation choices. And this is perhaps the most interesting part. Côn Đảo is becoming more internationally recognized, but its greatest challenge is also obvious. How do you develop tourism without destroying the very environment that makes the island special? The island's protected ecosystems, turtle populations, forests, and coral reefs are extremely valuable. That means sustainable tourism isn't simply a marketing slogan here, it is essential. Côn Đảo growing recognition, including its conservation credentials and recent international attention, could bring more visitors. But more visitors mean greater pressure on infrastructure, waste management, water resources, wildlife, and beaches. The future of Côn Đảo will depend on finding a balance between tourism development and conservation. And that balance could determine whether the island remains one of Vietnam's last great peaceful island escapes. Côn Sơn, or Côn Đảo, isn't simply another beautiful island in Vietnam. It's a destination with two very different identities. One is tropical, blue water, white sand, jungle-covered mountains, coral reefs, sea turtles, and quiet beaches. The other is historical, prisons, resistance, sacrifice, memory, and spirituality. Put those two sides together, and you get something incredibly unusual. An island where you can spend the morning snorkeling in crystal-clear water, the afternoon walking through history, and the evening standing quietly beneath the stars. And perhaps that's what makes Côn Đảo so special. It hasn't completely surrendered to mass tourism. It still feels remote. It still feels mysterious. And in 2026, it may be one of the most interesting places in Vietnam for travelers who want something beyond the ordinary. If you're looking for an island that combines natural beauty, history, conservation, culture, and luxury, Côn Đảo deserves a place on your Vietnam travel list.